Hi folks, welcome back. I have the latest GTA market reports for week ending October 11th. I got to tell you, when I get through this, you're going to think what I'm thinking. We've got some crazy days ahead of us in the real estate market. Let me start off with first of all, giving a summary. And in this report, you're going to hear some good news, you're going to hear some bad news, but let me talk about where we are. If we take January to September this year versus January to September last year. And just for fun, let's compare the two. And the numbers that I'm looking at refer to all the GTA, or in a sense, everything that's been traded on the Toronto Real Estate Board. And so that's all condos, all freehold properties, not just for the City of Toronto, but all the regions. So that's York, Durham, Peel. There's even properties from Hamilton all over the place. So if we look at sales last year from January to September, we sold, as of the end of September last year, we sold 67,888 units. This year so far to the end of September, we've sold 68,793. That's 905 units more. So we're actually in volume ahead of where we were last year this time. When we look at average sold price, so we take everything sold and we look at all the volume of dollars spent on real estate, last year at this time, if we take the average from January to September, the average sold price was $811,477. This year, the average is $920,168. It's $108,000 higher this year, the average sold price, than what it was last year. That's a 14.4% higher average sold price this year. What does that mean? It's just something to think about. We, this year, are living through a health crisis. We've been through the first wave, now we're into the second wave. You know, if I would have told you when we were in the first wave, oh, we're going to have a more volume in sales this year and our average sold price is going up, nobody would have believed it, including myself. I'm not making these numbers. These have already happened, and I just find it astonishing that we've bounced back as strong as we did. But not all markets can say the same thing, and I'll get into the report now. I'm first going to talk about Vaughan, then I'm going to talk about the City of Toronto. Okay, so we're looking at freehold properties just for Vaughan. And some of you from the comments have been asking me, well, why don't I do, say, York Region? Well, York Region, what I'm trying to do is keep the numbers as pure as possible in a specific area. So if I do York Region, that includes a lot of the rural properties. That'll include areas like Georgina, way out in Stouffville, and I just don't want to mix that in. So I can do Vaughan, that'll keep it pure. I can do Markham, I can do Richmond Hill. I'm just choosing to do Vaughan, that's all. So when we look at sales dropped down a little bit. Now, the previous week, 87 was a bit abnormal. It was higher than it normally has been. 60 kind of fits into a little bit lower than what the average has been over the last few weeks. Is this a trend that sales are starting to come down? Well, normally this time of the year, as we have come out of the fall and as the weather gets colder, sales tend to fall down a little bit and get a bit lower. But you know, over here we've been doing higher than we normally have this time last year. Our fall, it seems that we never had a spring, but our summer was the new spring, and that increase in volume has continued into the fall. And average sold price has dropped slightly. We're a little bit higher right now in average sold price. So for Vaughan, the average freehold property sold for $1,278,000. It's a little bit higher than before we went into the lockdown back in March. When we compare to last year, now you see, you can look at this and say, wow, we're 22.6% higher than we were last year. Well, not really. We are if we kind of look at that snapshot in time. I don't want anybody walking away from this thinking that all of a sudden this week, your freehold property in Vaughan is 22% higher than what it was last year. But it's just a simple comparison from the same week, year over year. The average sold price is much higher this year. The previous week, we're up by 1.7%. So the best thing to do if you're trying to get the value of your house is get a good realtor on your side and kind of have a look of what's happening in your neighborhood, the few streets around your home for similar properties to yours. That's the best way, because neighborhoods respond differently. And last year at this time, we were kind of winding down in price a little bit as we got closer to the winter months. This year, it's pretty steady. It doesn't seem to be moving much. Looking at sales and comparing year over year, now the orange is 2020, the blue is last year. We've been week after week after week selling more freehold properties in Vaughan than what we did last year. It's a little bit closer now for this past week, but of these 60 units that were sold in Vaughan, more than half, 52%, sold at list price or more. So there's still lots of action with multiple offers or people buying right away and paying full price. Listings are up also. So we're buying more. We've got more listings coming on the market. And when we look at months of inventory, we see that months of inventory kind of jumped up a little bit to 2.6 months of inventory. And that kind of got the average selling price a little bit lower. Makes sense. As months of inventory go up, average sold price usually tends to come down. And although 2.6 is kind of in the middle of what we would call a seller's market, it's a healthy seller's market. As we get to closer to 4 months, 4 to 6 months is what we would call a balanced market. Let's look at Vaughan condos. Now, when it comes to Vaughan condos, I'm doing it because a lot of people are asking, but the sales, the volume just isn't there to get accurate readings. So we'll find huge fluctuations. 1 or 2 properties, 1 or 2 condos could really skew the numbers one way or another. Well, sales dropped quite a bit. We went from it almost looks like a record 19 sales, although before the lockdown, we were up in the 30s condos sold in 1 week. After the lockdown, or where we are today, October 11th, we only sold 7. But average sold price is a little bit higher than where it was last week at $636,000. Compared to last year, we're a little bit higher when it comes to average sold price by 9%. Sales. When we compare what we were buying last year versus what we're buying this year, the orange again is 2020. We are buying far less condos this year than what we bought last year, but a lot more coming onto the market. We're listing far more condos, but by a lot, not just by a little bit. Like for October 11th, it's more than double than what we were listing last year at this time. Now, last year was what we call a normal season. As we head into the colder months, things kind of tend to, prices, volume, sales, listings kind of slow down. Activity kind of winds down a little bit. Well, it doesn't seem like that's happening for listings. We listed 52 condos, but we only bought 7 the previous week, and the following week we listed 52. Well, goes to show you here, months of inventory has shot way up to 9.5 months of inventory. And some of you are going to wonder, why so quick, so fast? Well, we only bought 7. The previous week, I believe we bought 19. The sales are so few that 1 or 2 or 3 condos, one way or another, just skews the number. But finally, the amount of listings every week, the active listings available for sales is increasing, and we're just not buying enough. We're very much in a buyer's market. So why haven't prices just dropped? Sometimes there's a delay, but we're finding that sellers are, although their prices are coming down a little bit, they're not really dropping them yet. A lot of the condo sellers are just holding on to their price, and so far buyers are paying it, although there is a slight difference in price, not a lot, Not yet. It'll be interesting to see, and this is why I titled this one Crazy Days Ahead. Over the next few months, are sellers going to feel the pressure to drop their prices, or they're just going to take their condos off the market? Renting it is not always a great option, especially if they're not covering their costs. So if they're not cash flow positive in the rent, they just might drop the price and kind of get out of the condo business and live to fight another day. Looking at City of Toronto. Now, I got into a discussion in the comments with somebody last week. What's the difference between City of Toronto and GTA? Well, when I talk about GTA, or all of Treb, I'll often refer to, I'm not taking a specific area. I'm looking at all the properties traded through the Toronto Real Estate Board, through Treb. And that includes properties in Hamilton, properties in as far out as Cobourg, or way out in the rural areas, way north of Barrie. Now, Barrie has its own real estate board, so properties will be sold on the Barrie board. Also, Hamilton has its own real estate board. Properties will be sold through that board, for example. But many people that are listing a property in Hamilton will also list it on the Toronto Real Estate Board. So I'll use the Toronto Real Estate Board, or sometimes I'll say GTA as a whole, just as a sampling. But when I look at, for the point of this conversation here, I'm looking at just the City of Toronto, just like I was looking at just Vaughan earlier. I'm trying to keep the numbers a little bit more pure so they make a bit more sense. I don't want a freehold property, say, sold in Oshawa, changing the numbers, the average sold price for what we're looking at, the City of Toronto. That's all. That's what I mean by City of Toronto. We can break it down further. We can go Scarborough, Central, or North York, or just Etobicoke, or we could break it down to even smaller neighborhoods than that. But for now, City of Toronto will serve its purposes for the sake of this market report. Okay, so sales. Sales dropped slightly to 380 last week. Not a big drop, but it did drop slightly. And average sold price is down to $1,348,000. Dropped by about $12,000. Now, I know my map here is getting a little bit messy, but over the last few weeks, prices have been hovering $1,343,000, $1,360,000. Last week, $1,348,000. So it's been quite steady for a while now. And if we come back, although the week ending September 20th shot up a bit higher, we're kind of been pretty even keel when it comes to freehold prices in the Toronto area, in the City of Toronto. Depending on how you look at this map or this chart, will give you a different picture. We can say they've been kind of steady. We can say, well, we're 10.7% lower than we were before we went into the lockdown. That would be true. So you could be thinking, well, prices are edging down. Well, when we look at our high price kind of here in the middle of June, 1.5 and 1.473, we have been trending down since there. And you'd be correct also in looking at the chart this way. So depending on how you look at it, will give you a different picture. But in general, over the last few weeks, prices have been pretty steady, maintaining in the neighborhood of $1,350,000 or so. Looking compared to last year, we're 7.8% higher just for this 1 week. Now, last year we sold 42 properties at $2 million or more. This year we sold 46 properties at $2 million or more, so not a big difference there, but still, where average sold price is higher than where we were last year. Sales, you know what? We are, for the most part, each week, doing a little bit more than what we did last year. Now remember, orange is 2020, blue is 2019, so we're a little bit higher in sales. And of the 380 that we sold last week, 61% were sold at list price or more. So the market's pretty active when it comes to freehold properties. Listings, we're listing much more than what we listed last year. So more and more properties are coming onto the market. And months of inventory, you know, sitting at a 1.5 months of inventory explains why 61% are selling at list price or more. It's a very vibrant, very active market, and that also explains why prices have been quite steady. We're a long ways from getting into a balanced market. We're sitting in a very strong seller's market when it comes to freehold properties in the city of Toronto. Now, condos. This is a whole different, it's like a different world when it comes to city of Toronto condos. Sales dropped way down. Big difference than what we sold. Last week we sold 292. Sorry, the previous week we sold 292. Last week we sold 188. That's a big drop from one week to the next. Average sold price jumped up by about 23,000. Average sold price is 703,000 for the average condo sold in the city of Toronto. I can't explain why average sold price. Well, I can, but overall it doesn't really make sense. The prices of the condos should be coming down. When we look a little bit deeper and a little bit closer into it, some of the more expensive condos we're starting to sell, which brought the average sold price up. Actually, of the condos that sold at $1 million or more, it was a little bit higher last week from the previous week. It went to 23. So we bought more condos were bought in the upper price bracket. When we look at where we were compared to before we went into the lockdown, we're a little bit lower by 1.1%. So we're pretty close to where we were before we went into the lockdown in March, in the first wave of this health crisis. Compared to last year, we're 5.5% higher when it comes to average sold price. As far as units at $1 million or more being sold, it's the same. This year and last year at the same time, 23 condos sold at $1 million or more for that week. Have a look here. Sales. When we compare condo sales this year to last year, way less than what we were selling last year. Last week, we sold 188 condos in the city of Toronto. And the city of Toronto is massive with hundreds of thousands of condos. To sell 188 in 1 week, it's a beating. Last year, at this same time, we sold 371. So there's a big difference there. Listings is a big difference also, but the opposite way. We are way ahead of, we're listing way more than what we listed last year. And it seems to be getting, the momentum is picking up. It's been 5, 6, 7 weeks now that we've been at over 1,000 condos listed out of the week. So we're buying, say, 250, 216, 292 a week. 188 condos a week are being sold. However, over 1,000, over 1,000, over 1,000, over 1,000. And last week, 1,123 condos are coming onto the market. So we're buying this much, but we're putting on the shelves this much. It's just logical that at some point the volume is going to be built up. We're not buying enough, and the months of inventory week after week after week has been getting higher, to where last week we went past the balance market of 4 to 6 months. We are sitting in a buyer's market territory. Now, one of the characteristics of a buyer's market territory is that prices tend to come down. The opposite is true in the seller's market. Prices tend to go up. Well, we're not seeing yet prices coming down. So, we have some crazy days ahead because the pressure of the pressure of the sellers to either decide, I'm not selling, well, that means they're hanging on to their condos, or I got to get rid of it. With the volume of listings going out, I believe there's more people in the team that says, I need to get rid of my condo. And if there's 20 or 30 units for sale in one building, there's only so much difference between them. The deciding factor is going to be price. And if you need to sell your condo, you're going to reduce the price. And if you're a buyer, you've got choices. And if you've got a good realtor on your side, then you know how to kind of really put pressure and figure out which of these condos you can get the best deal on. That's the report for this week. Look, there's a ton of information here. Be careful how you interpret this for your own use. Get a good realtor on your side. Subscribe below if you like what you hear. We love to hear your comments. Hit the bell so you're reminded each time one of these reports come out. My name is Santo Sessa with Remax Premier. Have an awesome and safe week.